Though Clark and Emily were colleagues at the same firm. They shared an office and frequently provided support. Emily cherished asking him questions and delighted in seeing the man come to her rescue. Emily sincerely appreciated Clark's assistance because she had experienced a challenging past relationship. Even though she was just 23 and he was nearly 30, she felt protected. Clark was assisting her with a challenging case one day. He playfully remarked, "Well, now you just have to go to the movies with me as a thank you," because they were staying out late. Emily didn't mind. She'd been waiting a long time, somewhere deep down, for Clark to make the first move for a long time. They entered the cinema as co-workers and came out as a couple, holding hands. It pleased them and scared them at the same time. A tiving year on, as Clark was poised to propose, Emily revealed their impending parenthood. Even though it was a small wedding, Emily looked stunning. But before they realized, the swift passage of time marked their 7th year of marriage, and their little one was already embarking on her first great adventures. Following her maternity leave, Emily went back to her job. She and Clark remained co-workers in the same office, solving problems together. But on her first day, she received a bouquet from her husband with a note. Everything was returning to as it had been. It was very pleasing to her, as Clark was not the kind to pull off such surprises, and he was usually very short on emotion. It's soon they were together at work, but at home Emily made an effort to avoid her husband at home by retiring to bed early. And if they did it at the same time, she refused to be intimate with him. She kissed him, caressed his face, said, "Honey, I have a headache. Let's do it tomorrow," and turned her head away. Clark was upset, but he kept it to himself. He didn't press the issue since he knew his wife was exhausted from her job and from taking care of the kid at home. However, the husband noticed that his wife began to dress up for work and frequently wore dresses and skirts, even purchased a bright lipstick for herself, although having before claimed to be uncomfortable. Clark, though, was pleased with his wife's appearance. He didn't object if she wanted to spend money on new clothes as long as it made her feel good. As they were both settled at their desks one day, Emily's phone screen flashed on. She glanced at the incoming text and started getting dressed. Just with a fresh application of her lipstick, she was heading for the door when her husband inquired, "Where are you off to?" But with a smile, she replied, "Rachel needs my assistance. I'll be back shortly." "Oh, wait up for me," Emily said with a reassuring nod from Clark. Rachel was a close friend of Emily's. They would frequently talk on the phone for hours on end, and they would spend half a day in each other's offices at work, sipping tea and chatting. Later, when she returned to the office, her lipstick was gone and a flush of excitement was on her face. "You don't like lipstick?" Clark asked. The woman looked at him fearfully, but she wiped the lipstick off for some reason. Emily explained that she had been sipping coffee with a companion, and the lipstick had left such a messy mark on the cup and smudged so extensively that she decided to wipe it off completely. As the day wound down, The wife requested that Clark fetch their daughter from her grandmother's house, citing unfinished tasks that demanded her attention. She had reports to complete, with the expectation of presentation to her superiors by the next morning. Clark kissed his wife and left without suspecting anything. Emily arrived home late. Her daughter had gone to sleep, and her husband was tidying up the kitchen. "Dear wonderful," she said, brushing his cheek gently with her fingers. Clark smiled. "I want to make your evening a little easier." That by the time he finished cleaning up, Emily had succumbed to sleep. A tinge of irritation crept over Clark. He didn't understand why his wife was avoiding him. He longed for her. Eventually, Clark observed that his wife frequently found reasons to step away from the office. Her excuses varied. Sometimes she wished to share tea with a colleague. Other times, she needed to freshen up, or she had matters to attend to in the accounting department. This was a departure from her previous routine, where she would typically remain in the office throughout her work hours. Her spouse felt there was a problem. He made a few attempts to engage Emily in serious discussion, dropping hints and making jokes about adultery. But Emily was unmoved and said no to every inquiry. Then Emily once again left the office, claiming she was stepping out for a snack. Clark waited a moment before trailing behind her. Until when he got to the dining room, his spouse wasn't there. Perhaps she had ventured to the cafeteria. "Have you caught sight of Emily?" he inquired of a colleague. The man said, "I believe she went to Ralph's," without looking away from his laptop. Ralph, their supervisor, had an office that few sought out by choice. He was rather harsh and rude, leaving colleagues reluctant to engage with him. Clark approached the supervisor's door, pausing to listen. Silence. He didn't feel like barging in and explaining why he was here. Was running his fingers through his hair in frustration. He was on the verge of walking away when a faint noise, the distinct sound of a leather sofa creaking, halted him. Therefore someone was inside. Clark really didn't want to go in there. Of being accused of cheating on you by his boss with his wife was a certain way to lose the job. Inside, he was having a dialogue with himself. A part of him was urging him to leave and do his business in peace, while the other was screaming for Clark to open the door with his foot and deal with whatever was plaguing him. His ear was still pressed against the door as he stood there. Any staff member who saw him now would assume he was insane. The quiet was broken by a woman's groan, followed by more and more. Clark found it intolerable. He decided to enter the office and see for himself, even if he gets fired later. He swung the door open sharply and burst into Ralph's office. With his trousers down, he was half lounging on the couch. He had Emily perched on his lap. A shock struck Clark, and he froze in the center of the room, unable to speak. The boss screamed, pushing Emily away from him. "What are you doing? You should close the door behind you, you lunatic." Other workers flooded in response to the commotion and yelling. They were met with a curious scene, their colleague with her skirt askew and the boss hastily drawing up his trousers. Emily broke down in tears and ran out of the office, unable to bear the intense intensity and the looks from the staff. Clark trailed after her and found her by his desk, leaning on it, weeping. Her husband put his hand on her shoulder. "Why, he was courting beautifully. I've missed that for so long." "You take me for granted," she complained. Initially, Clark was unsettled by her words, wrestling with the guilt. Yet amidst the turmoil, he experienced a moment of clarity. That is untrue. She had the option to discuss her issues with him, to express her grievances, yet she opted to seek comfort in the arms of another. Clark filed for divorce. He assured his daughter that their own special times would remain unchanged. The only difference would be that Dad and Mom would reside in separate homes. He quit his job, of course, as did Emily, who was unable to continue working there for a day following such humiliation. At every meeting, her colleagues made jokes and laughed at her. Emily only got married once after Clark, to a guy she met while on vacation. But regrettably, things did not work out even with him. Her second husband disclosed one day that his heart still belonged to his former spouse, and he intended to return to her, leaving Emily solitary once more. In addition, having to adjust to a new work after years of employment at the same location morally destroyed her. Emily will need to start again and adjust to a new life, embarking on a job hunt, searching for a new place to live, and seeking out new companions because their shared friends sided with her ex. Husband, Emily's life was in transition. Sooner or later, any secret becomes known to everyone. Now, the next story, Chris and Linda had been married for 6 years. Thus, over the past 2 years, Chris has been completely committed to advancing his career, which allowed him to attain great success. His dream was to construct his own. He construct his own home. And at present, the couple reside in a small city apartment and both are employed. The husband's demanding work schedule over the past 3 years has led to some changes in their relationship with Linda. There was no longer the same passion in their relationship. The tenses, though they were just neighbors at times, when his wife tried to diversify their personal life, Chris was not up to it. And when he himself finally saw the problem, Linda was not so willing to make contact. Upon learning at his job that his role would now include regular business travel, with the inaugural trip just weeks away, he felt a surge of enthusiasm. It meant increased confidence from his superiors and also brought back fond memories of last year's trip. In that period, his wife had been missing him so much that, if only briefly, a spark had returned in their relationship. Now perhaps it might also work. Several weeks went by. Chris said his wife farewell and headed off. At that moment, she was sad, which meant there was still hope. However, Linda's thoughts were not fixated on her marriage at that time. She was worried by the monotony, and her mind was preoccupied with finding ways to amuse herself during the impending week of solitude. An old acquaintance who had recently been divorced and was starting a new life called her, as if reading her mind. "Hi, Linda. I'm planning a party here, but as you may recall, I met a bar owner who kindly offered me his location for the evening. Come on, have some fun. You can't imagine the men I've invited, and went on to discuss her visitors. At that moment, Linda was staring at herself in the mirror. A mischievous grin spread across her face as she considered this an ideal chance to break free from the monotony of her daily routine. She didn't have to inform her spouse of this occurrence. After a week went by again, Chris came back from his business trip to find his wife more animated and chatty than usual. Yet this hiatus in their usual interactions didn't yield the reconnect he had been yearning for. Whenever her husband suggested a moment of closeness, she persistently cited exhaustion or simply turned away from him and said she was not in the mood. These rejections contrasted starkly with her overall demeanor. She got a new hairstyle, put on heels once more, and her inner shine returned. The man even suspected that she was expecting. But further events revealed the reasons for this change. The following month, the husband was once more slated for a brief work-related journey. He prepared his luggage in the early hours and carried it to his workplace, as he possessed a ticket for an evening train to a different city, with an assignment awaiting completion the subsequent morning. However, in a sudden twist, the business trip was postponed by a month. The man found himself returning home, yet the turn of events struck him as amusing. Deep down, he had harbored little desire for another swift departure. Chris walked home and saw that his wife had already put on her coat and was leaving. They bumped into each other in the hallway. Her hair was styled in elegant curls, her makeup was vivid, and she wore a dress that shimmered, attire she reserved for special events. "Chris, it seems you've left something behind," she remarked, eyeing her wristwatch, clearly not anticipating her husband's presence that evening. "The journey has been delayed," the husband stated. He then inquired, his suspicion rising, "Where are you off to dress like that?" Linda pulled her coat closer, hoping her bold attire had gone unnoticed. "And stick to reality. And visiting a friend," she replied hastily. "It's Helen's birthday." Just then, a series of quick honks sounded from a car directly below their window, as though urging someone to hurry. The wife swiftly unlocked her phone and began to type. Sensing something amiss, the husband dashed to the window, but by then the car had already sped away. He approached his wife, grabbed the phone from her hands, and began to scroll through the most recent messages. There were no new messages sent in the last few minutes. A heated argument broke out, and as a result, the wife stayed home that evening. Chris was left with the unmistakable impression that his wife was concealing something, yet he had no concrete proof. It's possible that Linda had nothing to do with the automobile in the yard. Their actions that night were very strange. The husband concluded that he should follow his wife and that the ideal time to do so would be during one of his alleged business travels, when she would be at her most liberated. Several days passed, and he acted as if their argument had never happened, casually mentioning at dinner that he had a business trip the next week. His wife maintained a composed facade, yet Chris noticed a fleeting smile cross her features. When the new week dawned, he informed his wife of his departure to the train station, gathered his belongings, and discreetly settled into a nearby hotel. It's in the evening, when the wife's workday was over, her husband lurked outside her office. When she exited, she immediately made a phone call and scanned the parking lot, seemingly searching for a particular vehicle. Spotting it, she waved joyfully at someone and ended the call. She certainly wouldn't smile like that at the cab driver. The wife got in the car and they drove off somewhere. The husband trailed after them. Unexpectedly, the vehicle halted at their own residence. Unknown exited the vehicle and held the door open for his wife. She gave him a gentle embrace while laughing. Chris's insides were already beginning to boil. How stupid you'd be to bring a lover into your house on the day your husband leaves. The husband opted to linger below for a spell before confronting the pair. It's best to catch her in the hot seat so she can't make excuses. The man gazed up at the windows of his flat, keeping watch. He thought it was time to go to them as the bedroom lights started to fade out. Chris listened while moving to the right floor. Music was playing within the flat. Well, at least they wouldn't be able to hear him open the door. The husband discovered the pair was now in their bedroom when he came inside his flat. For two was music playing. Chris tiptoed to the hall closet and gingerly extracted a bat, kept on standby for potential altercations. Then he entered the bedroom and saw his wife. She was sitting on top of a man. Chris sharply turned on the light, screamed, and hit the portable speaker that was blasting music with a bat. The only sounds in the room now were the terrified screams of lovers. Linda became so terrified that she even slid off the bed and her lover just froze in position, a horrified expression on his face. Chris yelled, "Get out of here," to the stranger, who appeared to understand what was going on and complied with the command right away. Chris forcefully ushered the man, who was scrambling for his shoes in the hallway, out of the flat. He then spun around to address his wife. "This concerns you too. Gather your belongings and leave. You've 10 minutes. With that, he retreated to a separate room, distancing himself to prevent any actions he might lament later. The terrified Linda started gathering her clothing and shoving them into bags. After a few days, she vanished. Chris got over his wrath a few days later and filed for divorce, unable to envision a shared future with Linda. Linda, on that calamitous night as she crossed the threshold, wasted no time in reaching out to her paramour. She intended to give the impression that her spouse was wild and dangerous, as well as to imply that even after they had split up, he was still pursuing her. Only her lover didn't answer the call and blocked her number. He did not want to repeat such adventures. As a result, Linda moved in with her friend for a while, who invited her to a party where she met her future lover. The two divorced ladies were now cohabiting. Maybe that was a good thing. They still hadn't tied the knot, but they had plenty of time to make it happen. Actually, when they went on dates that didn't lead to anything substantial, at least now things were honest and they weren't cheating anyone but themselves. Thank you for listening to this story to the end. And if you like it, please support us with a like as well as subscribe to our channel. Write in the comments what you think about the story.